Hey Vivin, welcome.
Great to be here, Ajit. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. It's been a while since we connected, so always a pleasure catching up again.
Great to catch up as well.
So, Vivin, as you know, I started this endeavor recently to understand more signal from noise, especially as it relates to AI in the AECO and manufacturing kind of spaces, which are, my two
Mhm.
loves in my professional life, all, the bedrock of technology. So lovely to have you here and have you talk about sort of what you're seeing in the space, where you see the puck moving and what you're looking at in your portfolio. So look forward to the conversation. But to kick things off, maybe just for our listeners, where tell us about your journey in the construction and construction tech world. How'd you get here?
It's been a long journey. It's not been a really straightforward journey in the sense that I'm a mechanical engineer, studied in India, and my first job was actually going to be in construction with Larsen and Toubro. I got an offer. I was going to go to Bombay to join that. I decided I was too young to start working, so I actually went in a very different direction. I did my MBA, majored in finance and economics, started off in investment banking. So as far as from construction as you could be. But then I wanted to come back to industrials, which is my core and what I wanted to do. So in McKinsey, where I joined right after, I was mostly industrials guy. So metals and mining, infrastructure, automotive. So spent a lot of time on refineries, mines, construction projects while I was spending time at McKinsey. So already had that background for about 6, 7 years. But truly, my construction journey started in earnest when I joined Hilti, which was where I joined the corp dev team. I looked at our expansion into a few new markets, looked at our software strategy and stuff, and then came to the US and started selling Hilti tools on construction sites. So I used to be the Hilti rep who used to go and sell tools on sites, understand what customers are doing. So literally I used to be on 10 job sites every day, right? So understood really how what different kind of projects are, what's the buying behavior, the customer preferences, and so on. So got to interact with some of the largest names in construction, so DPR, Hensel Phelps, Turner, Swinnett, and all of them. So being based in the Bay, had access to all of that, and eventually set up a CVC, ran that for Hilti, and that was a great experience. So I had the product experience, the workflow experience, and I had the investing experience as well. And about 4 years back, set up Zacua. So it's been a journey where I've looked at different aspects of construction, both from product, workflow, job site perspective, but also from a investing perspective. So hasn't been a straight path, but feels like this is where I belong.
Super. And I think there's something to be said about folks in the VC world who have been operators, builders, and commercial people, because then, having been in the coal face of where you're selling to, where your portfolio is selling to, I think that adds a lot of value to your portfolio companies, as well as help you sort of, get more signal from the noise of what you might be getting as inbound. So Vivin, tell us about Zacua. You started it 4 years ago. What's the play here? What's the play there?
So Zacua is an early stage fund investing in the built environment. So we do pre-seed to Series A investing in the space of the built world. That could be design, construction, operation, any of that. And we primarily look at three themes. We look at anything that can improve productivity and safety. So think topics like vertical AI, robotics, anything that can help with decarbonization. So new materials, circularity, or anything that helps us build resiliency in this space. So the energy transition, which is happening, affordable housing, new supply chains. So we start thinking about all of these topics and try to bring innovation to those topics. And the reason Zacua came to be is we'd been in CVCs before. And what we'd seen is startups struggle with early traction. So getting them access to customers, getting them access to workflows, R&D teams and all increases this chances of survival at the early stage of existence. On the other hand, you look at corporates and they struggle with getting deal flow. They struggle with understanding trends to an extent. So having an extended innovation partner is going to be beneficial. And if you have a VC in the center who's able to bridge the gap, it's both helpful for the startups as well as the corporates. And as a VC, you're adding so much more value than a traditional generalist VC that you get access to best in class deals, right? That was the concept that we put together. But to do that, you had to be global because all of these trends vary across regions, and we look at global maximas rather than local maximas. We wanted to be early stage because that's when startups need the most support. And we had to have the right set of experience, right? You understand construction, investing, corporates, startups, all of that in once. And you don't have a lot of people who have an assimilation of that kind of information. So that was the concept. And when we presented this to some of the largest corporates in the world, there's a lot of interest. And today we're backed by most of the leading names in the space. I won't name our LPs on a podcast, but that's how we come to be what we are.
And just in terms of sort of check sizes, fund size, can you give us some sense?
So Fund One was 56 million. Fund Two is 100 million, which we just launched a couple of months back. Check sizes vary. So in Fund Two, we write anyone from 1 million to 4 million. We mostly lead deals. We lead about 85-90% of the deals that we do. So whatever is appropriate for the round of funding.
Got it. Got it. And Vivin, you've seen the ecosystem kind of from your Hilti days to the CVC days to now Zacua 4, 5 years in. What are a couple of things that have shifted in terms of deal flow? Again, you look at it on a global basis. So what are a couple of things that have shifted?
One major thing, when I started in Hilti, there was no deal flow. There were no contact companies were pretty much non-existent. So I keep quoting this number, right? When we first started investing from a Hilti perspective, there are probably 1,000 contact startups in the ecosystem, right? Looking across databases. Today we have like 8.5, 9,000 in a database, right? And that's just scratching the surface. It's probably twice or thrice from an overall market perspective. So you look at a market which is like grown 20x in like 8 7 8 years, right? So there's been an explosion of solutions which have come into the space. And that does not just happen in one geography. I would say North America was probably the most concentrated when it started off, but now you're seeing more stuff in Europe. You're seeing a lot more stuff in India. So we're excited to see this spread across geographies. It's still much smaller than other ecosystems like fintech or healthcare and so on, but now it's a category on its own. So that has changed quite substantially. Uh, the second thing which has changed is the level of digitization. So startups can exist, but if you don't have revenue generation, then there's nowhere for these startups to go. That has also changed very significantly. So if you look at Procore is probably at 50 million revenues 2015, 2016, right? More than $1 billion in revenue. Autodesk revenues have like double, triple in that time frame. And just the startup revenues are in hundreds of millions, right? So there's probably a few $1 billion in revenue created from software deployment. And that's
And
very interesting.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because if you think about sort of call it broader real estate construction kind of value chain compared to financial services, they both comprise sort of a similar percentage of GDP in most countries. So you think that there's, somewhere around 10 to 12% is what the makeup is for each one of these categories. You look at what's happened in fintech, the question is, hopefully Contech and real estate tech, prop tech is kind of going the same way. Clearly come a long way since over the last 5, 7 years, I guess, but hopefully a lot more to be unearthed and built as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's just a lag, right? It is a matter of time. And if you look at most of the topics today, which are top of mind, right? You talk about climate change, you talk about AI infrastructure, you talk about affordable housing, resiliency of all the assets that we have. Everything is linked to infrastructure, right? Without innovating in the space, we cannot solve these issues. And that's why it's just a matter of when, not if.
And you alluded to sort of we are looking at deals globally. A lot of these themes are global. But could you help us with sort of, if you were to look at a market maturity continuum, is North America all the way up front, and then who's sort of behind and who's sort of behind that? How would you think about the markets?
I think it's by category, right? If you look at digital adoption, I think North America is much further along, but also I would not ignore Scandinavia, right? Scandinavia, there's like lots of BIM adoption and digital processes with embedded. If I think about sustainability, I think Europe is much further ahead when you talk about decarbonization efforts than North America is. If you think about robotics, China is not talked about enough, right? The level of adoption of robotics in China is much further along than most other parts of the world. So you have to be very specific. And if I look at business models, marketplaces are much more entrenched in, say, emerging markets, say India or South America, and so on. So you see that every market is at a different stage of evolution. Doesn't mean they're advanced in all aspects. It just means in some aspects they may be further along, in others they might be a little bit earlier.
That's a really good point because again, it's a function of what the market might need, right? In an Indian context, maybe an infra dot market is what is required, to move the needle. But in an American context, maybe a Procore is what is required to move the needle over the last few years. So, fair point. It's not just a holistic sort of across the board sort of view. It's probably call it category specific. Um, so tell us about what you're seeing in the AI space as it relates to construction. Again, there's so much noise where everybody just rebrands themselves to XXY.ai and suddenly, the valuation changes and their pitch changes and all of that jazz. What are you seeing really in terms of deal flow that is coming into the space that has an AI component to it?
So there's a significant level of noise, that is for certain, right? And when you think about construction, there are several different types of AI startups that we're interested in. So there won't be a lot of foundational models. There are probably one or two sector-specific foundational models which will arise, and they will have great outcomes. But the point is, the most of the market is going to be at the application layer, right?
Mm,
It's how the applications layer is defined, and that's this area where we're seeing the most crowded atmosphere, right? So you're taking traditional software applications and embedding AI into that. In some cases, you're embedding agents into that. So you go from a pure digitization to analytics to autonomy, right? It's just stage of evolution in some of these cases. Sometimes these are just wrappers, right? These are wrappers
mm,
on ChatGPT, GPT, or Claude, or anything else, where the question is, where's the defensibility coming from?
yep.
It's not coming from tech, but it could come from workflow. It could come from pace of execution. It could come from a really good understanding of the processes and the nuances that they're using to customize and build small models on top of existing models to basically get better accuracy. So understanding it a level deeper on saying why your defensibility is not going to vanish in 6 months with the next ChatGPT update, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying 6 months, it could be 2 weeks. Right? So that's how fast this is evolving.
Yeah.
So that is the first space where we see the most fluff being there in the market, and we need to assess that carefully. There's also other startups which are trying to automate tasks which are previously very difficult for especially design automation, right? Here, it's much deeper than wrappers because you're looking at building geometric models, you're building knowledge graphs, you're thinking about, okay, how does the process work and how can we take this process and automate it? And it's a non-trivial task. That's why startups so far have been pretty slow in getting traction and getting accuracy levels that is acceptable, right? So those are different areas where we're seeing new startups emerge. And if you fold robotics into AI, which I think is an extension, it's like physical AI, that again, there is less fluff because robotics is hard, right? You can actually see the deployments and you can see feedback real time. But we see that also picking up quite significantly.
That's, an extension of that commentary is I think there's this narrative around, hey, there are no moats anymore. Hey, distribution is the only moat. Hey, there are no product moats. So to your earlier comment about there's going to be fewer foundational models, but sort of more application specific pieces here. Now, how do you look at sort of product defensibility? I mean, what's your sort of mental model for that? Or is that even relevant?
It is relevant in certain cases. So typically you talk about three types of modes, right? So one is the technology mode, which could be from a product perspective. You have the distribution mode, the GTM. And the third is partnerships that you could set, which could be distribution, but it could be other forms of partnerships, which is kind of creating the locking effect. And I would also bucket in execution. In Silicon Valley in the past, execution was your mode, right? You just move fast enough, and that becomes your mode. technology still exists as a mode in some cases. For example, when you're building a robotic startup, you're building some vision models. You could have something with tactile control that you build or force control that you've looked at. So there are different aspects where you can be very specific. You could also patent it. So from a hardware robotics perspective, there's a clear area where you could have a mode, right? You could have it with materials technology. You could have it with certain foundational models. If you're building wrappers where you haven't developed anything new,
Mm.
then the technological mode is going to be shallow, right? It could be, you could say your ease of use is better than everyone else, but then you need to keep iterating to make sure that it stays better than everyone else over a period of time. It's not a long-term defensible mode at this point in time, right? You have to combine that with either distribution or execution to for you to survive in that space. And sometimes it's just a founder bet, right? You just say that, okay, these guys are good enough to execute faster than others, even though technological mode doesn't exist today.
Got it. Got it. And again, just double clicking on a couple of these in your portfolio. So where do you think, again, all your children are your favorite children, so you probably won't be able to pick one or two, but just humor us. Just pick one or two from your portfolio and say, hey, this is an interesting company that's leveraging AI to do X. Here's the customer value they're creating. Here's the before and after. Here's how they're building the rocket ship.
So I'll probably pick a couple, right? One is straightforward because Document Crunch was the first investment
Mhm.
that we did, right? Uh, so the good thing that Document Crunch did when they started off is they picked a lane. They said, our lane is contracts, our lane is compliance and risk, right? And they said, we'll do everything possible to go deep into it. So they looked at it, they looked at digesting documents, identifying risk, integrating with the workflows, putting channel partnerships around with it. And then they said, what else is important? Now they moved into specs, right? Understanding the risks that exist in specs, understanding of your specs, and all of that. And eventually they're becoming a risk management platform. So
Mhm.
even though they are becoming an agentic platform, but it's all aligned with the initial thought process in terms of saying we are helping reduce risk on job sites. And how do you do that? We do that by providing you more transparency. We do that by helping you have information at your fingertips at all points in time. And we are breaking silos and bringing all of that information together. So that is one approach. And if I take an approach at the other end of the spectrum, you have something like Konzai. So Konzai is basically an intelligence platform for construction. So they started from a vision perspective where they could digest any kind of information, LiDAR, photogrammetry, documents, all of it, right? But today they become a tool more like Palantir for construction, right? You define workflows and they will automate it for you. Right. So, and they have built a foundational model which basically has the ability to ingest and act on that. So it could be used for the largest corporations for solving a multitude of problems, right? But you could also say, I will have a very specific problem. I want to productize it. So they're production tracking modules. In some cases, they're productizing those, right? Inventory tracking modules. In some cases, they're productizing those. They're selling it as a layer to some camera companies where they say, okay, I was selling you dumb cameras before. I'm selling you smart cameras now, and this is the intelligence layer behind that, right? So there it's a much wider, much more complex approach,
Mhm.
but also a different mindset, right? It's more a product company. It's like we're building best-in-class products, and then we keep build the flexibility that you need.
I want to double click a little bit on Document Crunch because I think the commercial side might be a bit more interesting there. Probably faster sales cycles, quicker uptake, and so on. And what's driving that? I know intuitively, but I would love to hear your perspective.
So what's driving that is you have a easily identifiable problem, a real pain point, a solution which tackles exactly that, which integrates with your existing workflow. So everything is easy. You know, I have a problem, I have a solution, it's plug and play, and it goes, right? And the fact that they backed by Procore and Nemetschek and Trimble and all of these large players are fully integrated into the workflows as well, that makes a big difference as well. So it's like a typical SaaS flavor where it's an easy option for you in terms of deploying them.
Super, super. Very exciting, Vivin. Let's switch gears a little because you are doing things in India as well. So maybe two more questions. I want to keep this tight. I'm sure we can keep talking for hours, but I'm sure people will want to snooze and move on to other things, as do you. Um, Tell us about India a little, and then I want to round it off talking about a little bit of talent.
So India is a high priority market for us. For us, it is probably one of the biggest growth drivers, not just in construction but overall. So we've actually done three back-to-back deals in India just recently. Can't disclose all of them, but it's a market we are really bullish on. So for us, India has the right mix in terms of a growing construction market, young talent, good startup ecosystem, enough venture capital. So there is a lot of ingredients for India to witness explosive growth, right? Traditionally, India has not been at the forefront of construction tech innovation. 5 years back, I would say there's literally nothing happening in India from a context space, but that is changing very, very dramatically right now. And in the I wouldn't say it's an issue, but something that slows down software adoption in India is the labor costs, right? Because labor costs are still fairly low, which means that selling software solutions in India is not as easy. But people are finding ways around it, right? It's a large enough market that you don't have to sell to everyone. Even selling to a sliver of the market can make you a really large company. And that's the reason traditionally marketplace models have worked very well because distribution was not straightforward. But today you are seeing more and more SaaS companies. In also in India, there's two types of startups that are coming. One is startups who are built in India for India, and one is startups which are built in India for rest of the world, right? And the second part is also interesting because if you look at modeling efforts, one third of all BIM modeling happens in India, right? So India was the BIM modeler for the world, even in the past. And now that service mindset is translating to a product mindset. So a lot of people who have built the solutions are like, why can't I productize it? Why can't we automate some of this? And some of the best design automation startups that we've seen have come out of India. Still early, still a lot to be done there. But it's very exciting to see that happen because these are good product companies and folks in India are driving that. So we are very, very bullish on India, and it's a market where we'll continue to invest resources and hope to be doing much more.
That sounds very exciting, Vivin. Vivin, I know I want to be respectful of your time. I'm planning for these episodes to be sort of sitcom length, and I think we are right up on time here. Really enjoyed the conversation. Lots of insights about AI, about construction tech, and about India as well. Thanks for the time, and look forward to doing one more of these in a few months.
I look forward to it as well. This was a great conversation, and it's always good catching up.
Likewise. See you.
See ya.